Good evening, everybody. The Music Fan is back, bringing smiles to the faces, knowledge to the people, and most importantly, music to the masses. And I'm back with another Are You In, which can only mean one thing. It's time to start the timer, and away we go. So, tonight I'm looking at another pop-centric album, like I did previously with Charlie Puth's album. This one being Panic! At the Disco's newest album, entitled Prayer for the Wicked. Now, those of you who don't know who Panic! At the Disco is, they are a pop rock / synth pop, pop punk, emo pop, alt rock band from Las Vegas, Nevada. This is a very interesting band in terms of the lineup. I feel like this is a band that I would like to eventually do a digging through discography on, because it did have an original lineup, but with all the departures, the only current member in the band is Brandon Urie. So he does the lead vocals, he does the guitar, he does piano, keyboards, bass guitar, and drums for this band, as well with other members that tour with him or work on studio albums with him. But he is literally the last remaining member of Panic! At the Disco from its original state, which is a very interesting thing. I can't think of a lot of bands that have been through lineup changes like that. If you have any examples, I would love to hear them, because I am curious about stuff like this. Their previous albums include A Fever You Can't Sweat out in 2005, Pretty Odd in 2008, Vices and Virtues in 2011, Too Weird to Live, Too Rare to Die in 2013, and Death of a Bachelor in 2016. Now, just like Fall Out Boy, I never got into this band at the beginning. I thought it was a little bit too cheesy and a little bit too over the top, and I just was never the type of person to get interested in. In fact, I try to stay away from songs like I Don't Write Sins, I Write Tragedies, or Night in the Afternoon. I try to stay away from all of that. But it was not until the Ballad of Mona Lisa came out, and I saw the music video for it, and I really enjoyed Brandon Urie's showmanship in the music video. It reminded me a lot of the lead singer of My Chemical Romance. The song just stuck in my head a lot. So, Too Weird to Live, Too Rare to Die came out, and I listened to it. I actually really enjoyed it, as well as Death of a Bachelor. I would say that it was a little bit different from what I was imagining this band to be, but I understand that the lineup changes, it kind of changed everything in terms of style. I know that Brandon Urie is someone who is looking for a more pop-centric vibe. And you know what? I really enjoyed the last two albums. Songs like Miss Jackson, songs like This Is Gospel. A lot of really interesting songs off of both albums. Death of a Bachelor, LA Devotee, Emperor's New Clothes. There's a lot of really interesting songs that meld a lot of different genres. So, you know what? When I heard that this album was coming out, I was curious about it. I did hear Say Amen Saturday night, and I enjoyed it. It had a lot of the vibes of what I like of the previous two albums, and it was a very interesting arrangement. So, what did I think of this new album? I'm gonna say, let's get to the positives. There's not going to be many of them. I will say that there are some interesting songs on here. For example, Say Amen is a fun song to listen to. I love the bridge part of it. I love the descending half-step approaches in a lot of this song, and I think it builds very well. Even Fuck a Silver Lining as a beginning song, even though it's kind of ridiculous, it has a really fun nature to it, and I really like the chorus on it. It's really fun. You know, I shouldn't like it, but I do. And, you know, when the instrumentation and when the arrangements are interesting, it makes for some decent songs. The Overpass being one of them, where it has these blaring horn lines, as well as a really fast-paced drum idea that I really enjoy, and it makes for a very fun, very hectic song. A song like Roaring Twenties, again, has this more of a Broadway feel, a more of a 20s jazz song, and it even at the end does this little like dance line thing where it slows down for a minute and then goes back into the original idea. And Dying in LA is a beautiful closer, with this album having a lot of energy and a lot of bombastic arrangements, it's nice to hear a closer with just piano, and it is the highlight for me on the album. I just wish it wasn't literally at the end, because you kind of have to suffer through a lot of this album before that. Dying in LA, though, is a beautiful arrangement with just piano, and it gets to show off Brandon Urie's voice in a very nice way. King of the Clouds is also a decent song. I like the 6/8 feel of a lot of overlaying harmonies on there, and I just love the feel of that song. And then I would say, in terms of ones that I like more than others, I would put there Dancing's Not a Crime. I think that is the cutoff line. It's a funky song. It doesn't do anything original, no, but it's another fun one. The problem with this album, for me, is that there's way too much bombastic nature. There's way too much simple, over-the-top arrangements that, feel like either worse ideas of what they've done before, or very stale, very cliched pop ideas now. For example, High Hopes, one of the worst songs on the album, doesn't stand out at all. It feels like any other pop song nowadays, where it's using a lot of electronics and a lot of overlaying ideas without really any really interesting ideas. Old Fashioned sounds literally has a borrowed part of Thunder from Imagine Dragons, and that was one of the worst songs that I heard last year. And when you borrow something from that song, you're doing something wrong. I know a lot of people like that song. I don't. I think it's annoying, and this somehow took that idea and made it more annoying. One of the Drunks, again, very unoriginal, not really interesting to me. Hey Look Ma, I Made It. Fun, slowed down idea, but again, not really interesting. Again, the music behind it is not interesting, and most of these songs aren't really that interesting. Even when I'm talking about Dancing's Not a Crime, doesn't really have much of an interesting arrangement to me either. The Overpass and Roaring Twenties, even though they are nice songs, I feel like they did better on Death of a Bachelor, where it used this really interesting chord progression and a lot of interesting horn ideas, and used that electronic idea with it in such a better way in comparison to these two. I think for The Overpass, I think LA Devotee does it a little bit better, even though it's a different idea. The problem that I have with this album is that it doesn't, there isn't really a difference in the overall theme or the overall feel. Everything feels very partyish and very over the top. And when I look back at other albums, Death of the Bachelor and the previous album, I see a lot of different feels and a lot of different vibes that you're supposed to be getting throughout this album. And it just doesn't feel like this one does that until Dying in LA. Or King of the Clouds. I would say those two kind of feel different from everything else. Everything else kind of falls into that pattern. Now, there are some saving graces, like I said, with certain songs that have just a little bit more that make it kind of interesting. But again, even with Saturday Night, I feel like Miss Jackson did that better. There isn't really anything on here that is like, oh my god, I need to listen to this because it's going to be incredible. And honestly, the themes are kind of boisterous too. It feels weird to have these themes on an album after so many people have departed from the band. And, I don't know anything about the relationship between Brandon Urie and the rest of the members. I don't know if there's any hostility between anybody. But with the first 4 songs talking about either debauchery or making it and proving all the doubters wrong, I get that. From where you were to where you are now, you've made it, and that's really, really good, and I commend that. But after losing all these people from the band, and now you're doing these, when I can't think of any other time when they were doing something like that on the previous albums, it feels a little bit weird. It kind of feels like you are the last person standing on this band, and you are waving your flag of triumph. And that just feels a little bit weird. High Hopes, Hey Look On, I Made It, and Fuck a Silver Lining all have these themes of just like shooting for the best and knowing that you're going to succeed no matter what. And that's usually cool. But again, it just feels weird in this whole entire scheme. Roaring Twenties is talking about Brandon Urie's time on Broadway in the show Kinky Boots. And there are some more introspective songs on here. One of the Drunks is about the overconsumption of certain drugs and alcohol in the Hollywood sphere. Old Fashioned is talking about looking back on his earlier years of debauchery and compared to now and how that's not looked great. You know, it doesn't look good. Dying in LA is talking about, you know, not making it in LA, but having to be stuck there and not being able to go back to your past life. And then there's Dancing on a Crime. It's just a boyfriend and girlfriend dancing together. The Overpass is about a past love of his and wanting to go back to this overpass where things were a little bit more, you know, steamy, debaucherous, and simple. And then King of the Clouds is a talk about interdimensional travel and multiverses during a time when Brandon Urie was high and he was talking about certain things, and then his friend recorded it and they made lyrics into it. So it's a mixture of this just very weird mixture of longing for the past, but also his triumph in the music industry. And like, it's great that he has gotten to where he is, and you know, he was looking for a more pop-centric sound, and he was able to do it. For me personally, it's not really interesting. Most of this album feels one note. And it's not until that last song that you really feel like there's something a little bit different. And then it's just sad because it would have been really cool to see more of this combination. I personally, for me, won't be coming back to this album anytime soon. And if you are a Panic at the Disco fan, especially from the early stages, you're going to be surprised where this band has come from. It's even more of a difference between this and Too Weird to Live, Too Rare to Die, and Death of a Bachelor. At least with those two, there was a little bit more of a variance in sound and feel. Luckily, it's only 35 minutes long, so it's not a long album. But that's also another downside to this album. The Overpass and King of the Clouds, I really enjoyed those songs. Like, those are some of the better songs, but they are literally less than 3 minutes, and I wish that there was a little bit more to it. And there are certain songs that kind of overstay the welcome a little bit too much, like High Hopes, or Hey Look Mom, I Made It, or Old Fashioned. So overall, I would not listen to this album. If anything, I would listen to Dying in LA. I would listen to the single Say Amen. I would listen to The Overpass, Roaring Twenties, King of the Clouds, and that is kind of it. I might throw in Silver Lining because it's a fun opener, but that's basically it. It's not really worth your time, even if you are a Panic at the Disco fan. I wanted to bring this up real quick because we also have talked about the Fall Out Boy album, and both of them have been pretty disappointing, at least in my opinion. When I think about the most disappointing albums of this year, these two are definitely in there. And it's interesting to see that these two mainstays of this emo pop punk style from the early 2000s are now kind of ditching that sound. When I listened to Needle Drop talk about it, he was talking about the idea of the decline of rock. And I can definitely see that, though I would argue that there are a lot more bands out there that people don't know about that are still keeping the torch of rock alive. But it's really interesting to see the pop approaches that these two bands are taking. And honestly, like he said, and like I agree with, there are so many other bands that do it better. There are so many more artists that do it better that they should honestly stick with their sound and try to evolve it in a different way. Because they're trying to evolve it, and the weird thing is the way that they're evolving it, it is worse than so many other bands out there, and they're actually hurting themselves. To try to stay mainstream and try to stay relevant, they are hurting themselves. And it's sad. I would like to see both of these bands go back to some of their sounds from their previous albums and make it better. But that's all I have to say. That is my time. If you do like this album, of course, give this video a like. If you like what I'm talking about, give it a like as well. Tell me what you like or hate about this album. Share this with your friends. Hit that button in the middle to subscribe to my channel, and also ring the bell so that you can be notified for any other videos that I will be putting up, and just keep on watching my videos. So I finally got time to work with my brother, and we did 2 reviews. So the rest of this week there will be at least two other videos. The 5th and final part of the Digging Through the Discography of Talking, and another Are You In for an album that just came out 2 weeks ago. But until then, this is the Music Man, and I am signing